The Aldis podcast is brought to you by Aldis International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our AI in Action series, where leading minds in AI from across the world share their story, success, and advice. AI in Action cuts through the hype and explores the true impact of artificial intelligence in our world today.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guests today are Jim Foote, who is the co-founder and CEO of First Ascent Biomedical. With him is his co-founder and CTO, Noah Berlow. Guys, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
We're delighted to have you. So let's start with just giving the audience a quick introduction of both your backgrounds, your journey in technology, and what's led to the formation of First Ascent Biomedical. So Jim, if we could start with yourself, please.
Yeah, so I've spent my entire career in technology as a technology executive. Built most of my career solving complex problems using technology for big companies. Pivoted actually a few years ago and went into cybersecurity and really focused on applying technology to really better secure companies. Had a couple of startups, and that really has, I felt, prepared me for First Ascent Biomedical.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, Noah, over to yourself, if you could.
Absolutely. I actually started working in the AI space pretty early in undergrad and grad school. I did a PhD in electrical engineering. But during that time, I got pulled into childhood cancer research of all things, and a really great collaboration with a team in Oregon that were studying rare and deadly childhood cancers. And during that time, I kind of got pulled into that space between both electrical engineering and biology, pulling in bioinformatics, statistics, machine learning, all these different components to try to use really AI to solve problems in the clinical and medical space.
Thank you both. And it really does give a strong indication of the idea behind First Ascent Biomedical. But Jim, I want to come to you because I'd love for you to tell us the backstory and the idea behind First Ascent and when you decided to create the business.
Well, let me ask you a question, John, and even for the listeners, have you ever been impacted by cancer?
Yeah, unfortunately so, like many of us.
Yeah. Well, I'll ask you just over the next few minutes to kind of hold that thought in your mind. It was October 19th at 10 o'clock in the morning when my phone rang and I heard those words, cancer. And it's a day that, changed my life forever. And as much as I would have wanted those words to be said towards me, they weren't. They were said about my son, Trey, who was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 16. And like with most patients, we thought we were going to beat it. And I was shocked when the doctors came back to me and said, Jim, we've given it the best we've got. Trey's cancer's returned. And what would you like to do next? And I thought to myself, what would I like to do next? I thought this was a medical problem to be solved by doctors. And I'm a technology executive, but I did the research. I called researchers around the globe, came back with a treatment plan, and obviously I couldn't solve this problem to save my son. But what I realized along the way was that Trey's cancer treatment hadn't changed in 25 years. And that the only things that went into his treatment protocol were his age and his weight. And also I realized, just like with your experience, John, when your cancer comes back, you have few options left. And this is really why we started First Ascent Biomedical, because we realized it wasn't just a medical problem.
So such an impactful story. And when you think of the impact that biomedicine can have, a lot of the focus and effort is around eradication of serious illnesses, none more so than oncology and cancer treatment. But you've talked about the lack of progress. So it'd be great to talk about what First Ascent Biomedical is trying to do and where Noah comes into the picture. How did you meet Noah and how did you guys together decide to launch the business?
Yeah, no, great question. After my son died, we were committed to solving this problem. So we started a nonprofit And that nonprofit really wanted to invest in something that we thought we could make a significant difference. So we raised a bunch of money. And I was fortunate in that my pathway crossed with Dr. Charles Keller and Dr. Berlow, who at the time were building an AI integrated approach to solving cancer. And when I met Noah, I realized that the way that he was thinking about addressing cancer treatment was he looked at it like an electrical circuit. And if we could disrupt the cancer cells in as many different places, just like a switch on the wall, if we could turn enough of those switches off, the tumor would ultimately die. So my nonprofit invested our money into that research. And that's how Noah and I became connected. And as we started validating the technology, the results kept getting better and better. So first, Noah validated in vitro, and the results were really phenomenal. We then moved into mouse models and again applied the same technology, the same AI to treating cancer in mice. And the results kept getting better and better. And in 2016, we realized that we would be very limited what we could do in a nonprofit setting. And so I went back to school. I got my MBA. This was my grad school thesis. And really the objective of the company at the time when I went into grad school was, could we deliver this solution affordably? Every patient could afford it. And then number two, could we build a company that we can unlock value? In 2018, I graduated and I realized that we could do both. And that's really when we officially launched First Ascent Bio and really tried to accelerate this solution to be able to help millions of people around the globe.
So it's such an interesting story, Jim, and we could probably spend the remainder of the interview just talking about the mission side. But I want to bring in Noah to talk about the technology aspect, particularly AI. Okay. Noah, you're co-founder there and CTO, and we've done a lot of podcasts with people in the life sciences field, and it's a uniquely complex space to use AI applications for research and overall drug discovery or the early diagnosis and treatment. Can you talk to us about how you and your team at First Ascent is using AI to help you with this research?
Absolutely, happy to. All the work we're doing, it's really meant to be patient facing. It's really meant to help the patient that is not going to be there for the clinical trial that's going to be ready in 10 years. It's a patient that needs a treatment today. That's where all of our work begins. And the fundamental data set we're working with is called drug sensitivity testing. It's where you take the patient's cancer cells and test drugs against it, which sounds fundamentally simple, but in reality is a very complex process. But that gives you a little bit of a slice into what's going on in the patient. It gives you some information. The first place we integrate AI is taking all that drug testing data, which drugs killed the cancer cells, which drugs didn't, and merging in genomics data, which looks at DNA, and transcriptomics data, which looks at RNA, and basically starts taking which drugs worked, which drugs didn't, what the DNA is telling us, what the RNA is telling us, putting all of that into sort of this AI platform and giving us an understanding of the patient's mechanisms of drug sensitivity, or in other words, why the drugs are actually working on the patient's cells or why they aren't. Because when you start understanding why the drugs are working, it becomes a lot easier to, first of all, treat the patient, and second of all, build combinations for the patients. So, all of that combination design and that understanding of those mechanisms, that's driven by AI. And that's the first place we work in. But there are a lot of different ways that we can take that same data, not necessarily just across one patient, but across multiple, and start understanding, okay, we took in 100 breast cancer patients and we're seeing that this specific drug is really of interest. Why? That's where AI comes in again. And we can use really the same platform, just applied in a different way to understand, which of these 50 breast cancer patients will respond to drug X, which perhaps had been used in other cancers and hadn't been used in breast cancer before, and which 50 patients wouldn't respond. Having all of that data and having that AI platform enables us to start understanding in a much deeper way who is the right patient to get which drug at the right time. And that's really the focus of the AI. We've been doing that for quite a while, validating it across a variety of different cancer types. And what we see is when we take the right data set and the right analytics platform, the right AI platform, it keeps giving us good insight and keeps leading us towards promising conclusions.
You are listening to the Aldis podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.aldis.com.
Noah, staying with you then, you've given us this sort of broad platform of how you're utilizing aspects of AI. And obviously, First Ascent is early in its infancy in terms of long-term journey. So can you describe what it's like day to day now for you and your colleagues? And then talk to us about the project roadmap from a build, like focusing on utilizing larger data sets, derivating insights, where you can utilize data science. What does that look like over the next months and years?
Right now, the day to day, there's a mixture of science and when it comes down to it, business development. On the science side, because we've recently finished up a clinical trial, we're analyzing that data now, putting it all together, and the data looks really quite promising. But it's a lot of work to pull all of that clinical data together and start describing here are the real statistical insights, here are the real differences, here are some of those early biomarkers. There's a lot of work pulling all of that together. And in the meantime, the wet lab scientists, they're continuing to, work with patient samples, working to support development of new clinical collaborations. Because ultimately, the way we make this big, the way we help the people we want to help is by getting doctors excited about this, getting them as excited as the future patients will be as well. And that kind of leads in a way to the project roadmap because what I'll say about this is the work that I've been focusing on the AI side, it really relies on that drug sensitivity data. And that is data that has not been built in a large scale just really ever. Right now, if you're doing new drug development, you take your drug of interest, you test it against a bunch of cell lines. And maybe you're interested in drug X in lung cancer. Well, you take 10 or 15 lung cancer cell lines, test it. And that becomes the data set you work with. But what we're going to be able to build as we build this up and scale this out, it's going to be hundreds or thousands of drugs tested against tens or hundreds of thousands of patients. It's a data set that has never existed, and it's going to be really exciting to build it. It's imagining what people have been doing in genomics, sequencing 100,000 genomes and the insights that can provide. Except now we're adding on, and it also tells you which drugs are going to work for which patient or which drugs could work for which patients, which drugs probably won't work. It's going to be able to start providing insights that just haven't existed. All of this together, it's going to be this concert between laboratory sciences and clinical services, taking in patient samples, testing drugs, building data sets, aggregating all of it together, the drug testing, the genomics, the transcriptomics. And then as we continue to build that out, scaling the AI in new ways to start creating insights where previously none really could have existed. Again, because this kind of data set just hasn't really existed before. We're building that massive data set that's going to start providing insights and ideas that people would have never really conceived of. And that's the roadmap going forward. It's build the data set, continue scaling the AI and seeing what we can find.
And if I could
Right.
add, and we're going to be doing all of this in near real time. Again, insights that we'll be able to provide to potentially drug companies in near real time about new indications for novel uses for existing drugs, I think is just an incredible opportunity to really help advance the science and bring and accelerate new drugs to market.
Yeah, Jim, thank you for coming back in on that because where I wanted to take the conversation from here is really just to get your perspective on what's next for First Ascent. You've come up with the concept, you've got a very clear mission, and the early research are showing really promising signs, but you've got a long way to go, which is exciting for the growth of the company. When you look at the next 12 to 24 months, what are some of the milestones you're working towards? What are some of the investments that you're expecting to see come in? And what will the knock-on effect be from the headcount?
Yeah, no, great question. So our platform's been built off of about $4.5 million of NIH and NSF grants. We continue to apply for grants. So we have a pathway to commercialization using public funding like that. However, we feel because of our results, we just feel this sense of urgency that there are people out there that are getting sick every day from cancer and have few alternatives. And so we're really trying to accelerate the company into a commercial setting. We just closed our angel round, and that gives us 24 months of cash to burn, but we're really trying to raise capital to open a commercial CLIA lab. That's what will allow us to begin treating patients or helping patients anywhere in the United States, being able to give them an individualized cancer treatment plan when, the primary care has failed. We've also just received a 1.8 million grant in conjunction with a university to do a 65 patient study to really analyze health disparities within Black and Brown people as it relates to cancer. And so that 65 patient study is scheduled to kick off in January. And we're really excited to be able to extend our cancer treatment tool or platform into some of these underserved communities.
So, Jim, final question from me then, staying on the topic of the funding and the grants, that's going to impact a lot of growth. So, when you look at the next 12 to 24 months, what are you most excited about? And part two of that question being, for others who are listening to this, who are excited about what you're doing, what opportunities are there going to be for people to come and join you on this mission?
John, let me answer that just to start us off. So one of the things that I'm most excited about personally, and this is maybe next 12, maybe next 24, but in the near future, it's the potential for global impact for what we're doing. Healthcare systems in the US and the healthcare systems in other countries are really quite different fundamentally. But the ability to deliver our platform to countries around the world presents a huge opportunity because there are many countries that don't necessarily get the most cutting edge drugs, that don't have hundreds or thousands of clinical trials available. They have the drugs that exist and patients that need them. And ultimately, that is where, on a patient by patient basis, our platform can create really positive impact. Take countries where there is the standard formulary of drugs and the set of drugs that came out 5 years ago, drugs that are very powerful and given to the right patients can truly improve outcomes. But there isn't necessarily the best way to deploy them. There are many countries with exactly that kind of setup. And that is a place where we can really have positive impact, helping doctors around the world find the best drugs available in everything they've got in their hospital to treat their patient right in front of them. That's, to me, one of the really exciting potential, really exciting future opportunities for what we're doing.
I think the thing that excites us the most in the next 12 months is the number of families and lives that we're going to be able to impact and hopefully prevent another family from having to go through what we've been through. So I think we never lose sight of that mission, the impact that we're going to have on people fighting cancer. Obviously, this creates some immense opportunities as we grow and scale. We're going to be bringing in data scientists to analyze the massive quantities of data that we're going to be collecting, and also wet lab workers. So people that are used to dealing with the biology side, because again, when you remember, we've really combined biology and technology to create this platform to help millions. So we'll be bringing in those types of people. And then it's real interesting because there are two other groups that we're going to focus on. One is patient care coordination. So somebody who is familiar with dealing with patients, dealing with doctors, dealing with insurance companies. And then finally, dealing with pharmaceutical companies because some of these drugs could be very expensive. And to work with the drug companies to try to acquire these drugs under a compassionate use umbrella. Again, it's a multi-pronged hiring plan. And I think one other area is sales and marketing. We've been great at the technology. We've been great at the clinical validation. We're not salespeople. We're not marketing people. So we're looking to grow in those areas as well.
Jim and Noah, thank you both so much for coming on and talking to us today. It really was a pleasure to learn about First Ascent Biomedical and obviously coming from a tragic backstory, but a very clear mission that I think most people listening will be able to associate with and get behind. It's an amazing use of AI and data uh, to help impact, healthcare as a whole. And obviously early in your journey, but already a lot of exciting growth ahead. And sounds like an amazing place for people to work, apply their craft. So we wish you, the team, and everyone there at First Ascent the best of luck in the months and years to come. And we look forward to having you back on the show in the near future and hearing about what you've accomplished.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on. It's been really great.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the All This podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.allthis.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.